Hi guys, so this is what 150 people looks like. You guys look great, by the way. I am Will, and I do work at Firebelly. And before I talk a little bit about the theme for the month, I kind of want to just do a bit of a background of how I've gotten here, how I've arrived to be standing on the stage, how I've ended up in Chicago. Because it's not what I expected. I went to school, Wayland College of Art and Design in Sarasota, Florida. And I graduated in 2002, and for most of the 4 years that I was there, I kind of felt like we were promised we would have all of the opportunity that we should have. We would have a job, it was very easy. The internet was happening, the internet economy was happening. Everything was great. So, can everybody hear me? Okay. Way better that one. Okay. So, everything looked great. Everything was feeling, really wonderful. And then sort of the bubble burst. The internet economy exploded, and 2001, September 11th happened. And by the time we were ready to graduate, we were definitely not promised anything anymore. And a lot of the opportunities that we expected to have were kind of gone, and we were in Florida, sort of wondering, what do we do now? There wasn't a lot of opportunity to do interesting work or exciting work or work that actually mattered. So I took a huge risk at that time in my life, which felt, massively huge. And I just jumped in a U-Haul truck with 2 friends and came to a place that I had never been before. No money, no job, nothing lined up. I kind of reset my network by doing that. I didn't know what I was going to do or how I was going to do it. I just figured I'd get here and figure it out. So these 2 other guys that I moved here with, they were friends and collaborators, people that I had gone to school with. And we figured, well, if we can't find jobs when we get here, we'll just start our own thing and do it that way. Freelance always works. So we showed up, and very quickly I realized I didn't really have the portfolio that I had hoped to have. So, all of the 4 years that I was in school, I was making a lot of work, and I was making work very quickly. And for the most part, I understood what it was I was doing and why I was doing it. But I was definitely not happy with the outcome a lot of the time. It felt rushed, it felt unfinished. And when I got here, I realized very quickly I had to rework a lot of things. I had to put it together in a way that I understood, a way that I would be able to sell it to somebody or convince somebody that I knew what I was doing and that I was really good at this and I could do it many times. So I didn't get a job in design right away. I ended up getting a job at Joe's Bar. If anybody's been there, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's the worst place on the planet, but it's getting pretty close. I was really excited thinking that I was actually going to do posters and flyers and really fun things that you get to do as like a cool gig poster designer. Very quickly I realized I was actually just doing office work and answering the phones and sort of reworking Microsoft Word templates for announcements. And that wasn't super exciting, and I didn't really want to do that. So they said, why don't you go outside and pass out things to people on the beach? And that's what I did for 2 months, and that was also not what I had spent 4 years studying. But it was really great because I did actually get to meet a lot of people, learn how to talk to very different types of people. I wasn't really comfortable doing that at the time. And being out there passing out lemonade to people, it's pretty great. I was getting to understand Chicago. I was, seeing who was here, just the different types of things that you can come in contact with. And like everything happens, summer turns to fall. And I had to figure out what to do because nobody wanted to go to the beach and drink lemonade in October. So I had to do a good bit of convincing to that, with that place to let me stay on and actually start to revamp some of the design that they had, rethink kind of how they were doing their marketing and how they were looking at the materials that they were putting out there and getting people to come in. So with a lot of convincing, they did let me stay. And so I started, reworking things that they had spent a lot of time in there doing posters. And, some things I was very happy about, some things not so much, and some things that you could see were sort of a start to something bigger. Did that for quite a while, maybe about a year, and got terribly frustrated because it just turned back into more of an office job than anything else. Convinced the owner of the bar to let me pretty much take the work on like a freelance basis. So I wanted to go home, I wanted to be at home, and I wanted to be working, and I wanted to be connecting with other places that were doing the work that I felt like I really wanted to be doing, branding, logos, just more print stuff that was more interesting to me at the time. Things that I didn't really feel like my portfolio had a lot of, that I needed to grow. So I picked them up as a consistent client, and I went back to my place and started life as a freelancer for a while. And that worked out pretty well. And I picked up a few great clients along the way. Most of it was off-site. A few places out in the suburbs that specialized in branding. And there was one place in particular that would have me do a lot of logos. And I would never actually see those things go through to the end. I would do a lot of sketching. I would do a lot of initial concepting and drawing. And that's how I knew how to do that work. I knew how to do logos. And branding that way from school. I would draw a lot of stuff. I would always overproduce because what really mattered to me was that I wanted to build this portfolio. So I didn't mind doing the extra work, and I thought that was something that was really important. I'll undercharge and I'll overwork. In retrospect, probably not the best idea, but I really built up a great body of work through doing that. It was also the first time that, as a working professional, somebody told me I was good at it. In drawing all of these logos and doing this stuff, I was also drawing a lot of the type, suggesting things. You should be looking for fonts of this nature, in this style, with these characteristics. And I would be drawing those out because they definitely had more of a repository of type than I had. And I was never actually seeing these things all the way through. So I was drawing a lot of type and got really, really interested in it. Got some of my first compliments, got excited, and decided to start buying as many books as I could, because here's the first time somebody's telling me, you're good at this, you should be doing more of it. So bought as many books as I could get my hands on about crafting letters, drawing letters, doing those things with proper proportions, understanding how type works, and really sort of having almost like a mini master's program at my house for a year. Just really learning about all of the things that sort of get glazed over when you're in school. There's not a lot of very specific typography attention. A lot of people that I come in contact with that don't necessarily have a focus on typography. They take type classes, but then they don't necessarily know what to do with it. So I came out of that really excited and interested in all of that. And after maybe 2 years of doing freelance, I decided it would also really be great to have healthcare and use some of these skills and type in a different way. So I made my way into CS Magazine, which is a fashion magazine here. They have different regions and different markets, but different names in many different places. And because of a lot of the poster work that I had done and reworked, and some of my schoolwork that I had come out with, that I had sort of finished up and finalized in a way that I could present, and then a lot of this typesetting stuff, it really made me excited to sort of put myself out there as being able to be sort of a marketing designer or a promotional designer. And CS took me on as a lead marketing designer, or at the time just marketing designer, to start this new thing that they didn't have. I spent 2.5 years there, and in the beginning it was really, really great. Everything was fresh, everything was new. It was a lot of new stuff that was happening, new work, and then about a year in, you kind of realize you're templating your way out of the job, because as things need to get quicker and more efficient, that means creativity is the first thing to go. And 2.5 years, I could put up with that. I got to do a lot of cool stuff and interesting things and meet a lot of great people. So not so great either. But I decided I needed to sort of leave that environment. I was getting tired of making rich people richer. I wanted to do work that was still living the dream of design studio that feels like you're in a loft with exposed brick walls and lots of cool people and tons of coffee. And I really wanted to live that life and just try that out and see what it would be like to be in a real studio. So through a friend of a friend and an accident within another accident, I ran across Firebelly and Don Hancock. And We met on a Saturday morning. I had just come back from the print shop to pick up a fresh batch of 500 letterpress cards. I handed her the first one, and then never handed another one out again. So I started at Firebelly as senior designer back in 2007. I'm now the studio's creative director. I'm happy for all the things that Firebelly has that the other places didn't. We really love what we do. We love the fact that we work as a team and all the things and roles that we can do. And on any given day, any of these things can happen. I can be creative director, art director, production designer, client relations, teacher, mentor, chef, fitness coach. Many roles, and I think those many roles really lead to stronger relationships with our clients and with each other. And I don't know, something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is really, it's at Firebelly, it's really not about being rich, it's just about feeling rich. So, the theme for the month is connect. So I like to see connect in this way, as working with your hands, your team, and your life. And more specifically, hands being a natural way of making moments for larger collaboration as team, and life is making personally important work. So I'm going to show you some work that I've had the privilege of working on. Some really great stuff that I'm proud of, by myself and as a team. And hopefully I get through everything. I'm trying to get so we can have time to do a nice Q&A. But so the first connection would be hands. These things can happen quick, feel like exploration, and tend to be tactile. Work in this space allows for discovery through accidents, keeps iteration feeling forever malleable, and rewards with a sense of reality and human connection. So literally, hands. If you guys don't know what we do, the show is called Typeboards. It's really a show for artists who work in the medium of alphabets and languages. And this poster, we typically do a poster, and we also do a book. And the poster is usually the announcement to let artists know they can start submitting their ideas and submitting their work. And this year was actually like a pretty simple idea. Something that I always say in my type class is, uppercase letters are really just a series of triangles, squares, and circles. And as well as like in the show, when you're there, you really can't reproduce that feeling the first night of the opening. We get about 900 to 1,000 people come through. And forever after that, really what you're doing is just taking a part of that with you away. So, hands sort of grabbing pieces of this, from this idea of poking through these shapes and sort of Instagramming and snapping a lot of these ideas from the show and a lot of what you're seeing and that experience that you're grabbing. The rectangle sort of serves to signify the book that will come. It was really a simple idea, but it wasn't something that was totally photoshopped. It wasn't really faked. We set out, I cut some holes in a backdrop, much to the dismay of everyone in the office, and circles, squares, and triangles, and poked some friends' hands through them, and cut out some letters based on really simple geometry, and taped them down to popsicle sticks so they didn't flap around, and just started photographing it. That's Greg on the far right, if you can see his head. But just started photographing what was happening and allowing for that moment, that tactile feel, that human connection of what's going on in the work. So then this is sort of another way of looking at that as well. Discovering through accidents. What I had set out to do when I started working on this was definitely not where I arrived at. This is sort of a papercraft representation of what a pop-up show flyer should really be. There's all kinds of constants and variables in this, but one thing you can see is sketching, starting with a pencil sketch, coming up with an idea and seeing where that idea can go. And if I had gone where I had originally thought, it probably would not have looked as good and not have been as interesting and not have surprised me as much. So building these models, building these constant elements, things that would sort of become a font in its own way that I could work from, and allowing for fun variation in depth. So the different depths of the different letters allow for sort of this opening and this fun variety to start to happen through the letters. And you can see how you can sort of translate that back into the computer then as you start to build out the alphabet and look at the different ways this is going to go. There's all kinds of sketch lines if you can't see that. But really working with a lot of this stuff, and then photographing it. Again, using your hands, getting off the computer, and just allowing that to sort of, become like a huge piece of what you're doing. And this is just a light setup that we have, in the back of our office, really small, nothing crazy. But still using the computer as a tool to put all of those things together that you've made with your hands. Another way I see hands working as more of a discovery and a physical response to the person who's actually receiving the piece. So this piece was for art and science gift cards, business cards, all of the things that we had been doing for a branding project with these guys. They're a hair salon. And we wanted to incorporate a lot of different materials to create a response like that. Rubber bands, envelopes, stickers, lots of die cuts, interesting things that would make it precious and important when you got it. So when you actually receive that, you're stretching these things out. You're feeling that response of something opening or something peeling off. We also use some reflective foil stamps that are clear foil, die cut, so a twist of the hand would reveal a different type of reflection, something that you really see in a different way using your hands. Another thing that I think Kim had mentioned as well, I also practice a lot of lettering. Maybe not daily, even though it should be daily, but it's something that's always interested me going back to the days of doing those logo sketches. And keeping a big sketchbook of just working with different tools, different pens, different materials. It's just something that I've always got with me, and I'll always just practice. I like to do this because I think when the work requires it and needs it, it's a way to sort of insert a brand new type of personality, something that is not expected. It's not a font. It makes your work feel much more personal and much more unique to you. It's not picking someone else's work and sort of piecing it together with things that you've started. So, while I haven't gotten to do a ton of this, I hope to be doing a ton of this someday. Quite often I'll just hear a random word and turn it into something interesting. And my goal here is to really take it from sketchbook to computer quite quickly and practice getting faster at that, so that can become a viable solution or execution for a project that we're working on. Also, the way that I post these on Flickr is really just sort of a color exploration as well. So this is kind of how I use my hands. Team is something that's also very important, especially within the confines of our studio. I see it as these things happening together and feeling momentous, important, and special. I left life as a freelancer behind because I realized I couldn't do my best and most important work alone, and I was lonely as a freelancer. One really great story that we have about Team at the studio is what we do with Camp Firebelly. You saw me on the tire swing, that's part of it. We bring in 10 students and recent grads, and they come in for 10 days, and they don't know each other, they don't know the project they're about to work on, but they pretty much become the best of friends. We make together, we eat together, we play together, we definitely don't sleep together. So, there's lots, we typically work with a nonprofit, and that's how it, that usually takes up the bulk of what we do. They leave with printed pieces and final work. But along the way, there's all kinds of side missions that we get involved in as well. With friends, collaborators, other nonprofits, things that we can do and knock out within a day or two. And 2 years ago, we got together with Rebuilding Exchange and decided that teaming up with the You Are Beautiful campaign that Matthew Hoffman does, each camper and each counselor would build one letter for sort of one mega installation of a You Are Beautiful, and it would be installed somewhere yet to be named, I think. But these are the campers sort of working on these things, and if you can imagine lots of tired young people with power tools, it can be a kind of a scary experience. But everybody's learning something along the way, so these are tools that people don't necessarily ever come in contact with, and you have to think physically, and you have to think about what it is that you're going to build, how is it going to hang, how is it going to become something real. You can start to see all of these things laid out, so this team process, this teamwork inside of the Rebuilding Exchange space, where everything is laid out, everything is working. But tying that back too with pencil sketches, seeing how the pencil sketches go into something that becomes physical and layered and dimensional. And after 2 days of work over a weekend, not much sleep, lots of frustration, but a good time, you start to see how everything comes together. And some of these things move. That animated GIF is playing. That's good. Some of these move, some of these open, some of these light up. All kinds of interesting ones where, inspired by reality and forms, inspired by life. So the idea you have a table and you can open it with leaves and make it larger, or you can do that with a font and make it expanded and condensed. Nature taking its place in some of this alphabet to have this message. Using, flexible and malleable parts to create something. This was a bunch of bike tube tires sealed or nailed to a bunch of wood, and then work that's meant to be seen from different perspectives. So another team effort is this Typework book, and I have copies of it. Sort of see later, but this is not necessarily, even though we do this as a team, this is something that's sort of a bigger team. It's a team of people that we don't necessarily see all the time. It's the team of artists and the people who work in this medium that we care about, working with letters, working with alphabets, working in this way. And we wanted to provide this for them. It's sort of a thank you in some way, but to support that team that we may not necessarily see. And really the whole book is about emerging artists. So we had this wild concept of gold and rock and being inspired by Roman inscriptional letters and cave paintings and all kinds of wild conversations about where language originated from, how it started, early inscriptional writing, early carvings. So the book kind of takes on a rock-like appearance. There's actually no physical way into the book until you figure it out and you're sort of shaking it, and it's sort of this black monolith thing. You don't know what to do with it. It kind of makes you feel like the Monkees of 2001. But what you have on the front is sort of this, gold striations that are sort of gleaming through this rock, and it's really meant to represent the energy and excitement that comes from these people, these artists doing this work. So when you open the book, we started to bring in a lot of the other teams too. The team that's actually producing this. So we had guys on the foil stamp side, Delta, creating these things by hand, like hand carving these tools, following our interest for the striations and how you would get those linear cuts if you were chiseling this out of stone. And many parts of this were actually made by hand from a plate or a die maker. And it didn't just stop there. We decided that we wanted to build a typeface that would go inside of this book and use this for the artist intros and titles as well. So we created this sort of Roman inscriptional letter inspiring font, built out the alphabet for that, and it became the page numbers on some of the intros to each of these different artists. So you can see the cover on the left, and then you can also see some of the spread interior details where the teamwork really comes together. Here's a few slides of just how those things happen. The production team, offsite, inspecting things, making sure that everything looks great. They put in just as much effort as we did to make this book. The black rock outer wrap on press, and just some of the plates that were made. Our favorite print rep at Graphic Arts Studios, Mike Dillon, in his kitchen with his wife, taping covers to the book. God bless that guy. And really all of this coming together to this, sort of monumental finish line of this book that becomes sort of like a forever piece for us, something that we can be really proud of, as well as hopefully the artists who were involved in the show. But monumental finish, we didn't just stop there. After making that alphabet with that font that we had created, we decided to blow it up into 6-foot concrete letters. So in our space down in the basement, there's a guy who works with concrete and metal and welding, and he helped us create the forms, create the molds, and then ultimately create the concrete letters. So I learned how to, with a few others like Nick, we learned how to spray concrete and create these molds for this. So 6-foot tall letters that then went into the window at the show this year. We did a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. There were some human busts and I think a psychedelic pig. It got really weird. We usually don't sleep very much, so it all made sense to us at the time. So here's another team project. Whether or not you know that we worked on this with IDEO at the studio. I can't really say too much about this. I mean, I think I could say way too much about this, and I won't. I want to kind of just express that this was a really great team project. It was really a project that was for a team larger than what we knew. A team of writers. It was a gift back to the city of Chicago. It was something that we're all bikers at the studio as well, so it was something that we felt really proud of, and it was really important to be working on it, and we wanted to get it right. We didn't want to rush it, and we had a great time working with a lot of different people. Team collaboration, IDEO helped us out in the early stages of the research, strategy, the naming, and we brought in IDEO folks, met at their space. We were there The team from the city as well, Scott Kubley and Gabe Klein, as well as a few others. And then we hit the streets, and to hear that team, to hear what people thought about riding, to hear what they think about the experience of riding in the city. So that's a lot of us out there sort of talking to this crowd. And it could have been many things. It could have been yellow, it could have been green, it could have been pretty wild. But it really became the right thing because it was a great team effort, and this guy was part of the team as well. Life. So life, I feel like these things are rich, blended, and satisfying. Excuse me. I always feel like to make greater work, it takes practice, being a greater human. Life lives beyond the screens that we put in front of us. And one way to get away from the screen that I've found is to document signage and lettering sort of out in the public space. Something I used to do was I would jump on my bike and ride around the city and photograph all of this stuff. And that's a lot to look at, but I've got at least 1,200 to 1,400 photos now. Just signage, a lot of it doesn't exist, and it sort of started in this place that at the time, I think it was 2008, the real estate economy was pretty much tearing down a building on my block every week, and there was so much great stuff going on, just painted, on the sides of buildings, what was left from, offices that were there or storefronts that were there, and it was disappearing very, very fast. So I wanted to make sure that I got my hands on it and was able to use it for something, perhaps be inspired by it, going back to the lettering, falling back to these solutions because I think they're beautiful in their own amateur way. And sometimes it takes you, near and far. We took a trip to Thailand quite a few years back as a studio, and it really became interesting to see, typeforms and document those from a different language, where it really became more about shape than it did about understanding what it said. So, in this case, it's sort of the understood and the abstract. Sometimes the old and the new, paint and graffiti, and sometimes the accidental and the amateur. I think the one on the left, the more I keep looking at that, the more beautiful that becomes. It's really a profound statement, and it was totally an accident. I think the bee just fell off the wall or something. But yeah, accidental and amateur, and all of these things from different places. Okay, so Kim also mentioned that I have run marathons. So one thing that started happening when I decided I wanted to run again, I ran a long time ago when I was in high school, and just sort of stopped and sort of had that moment that everybody has in their early 20s where I like to drink too much beer and just have too much of a good time. And I was like, well, I'm getting older now. I need to clean up my act a little bit and get healthy again. And one way was to start running. So I started doing the marathons again. I'm currently training for the third one, but it was starting to eat up a ton of my time. And so I quickly discovered, well, iPhones have a really nice camera now, and I'm outside all the time. I might as well just start documenting a lot of that signage as I run. So I started photographing things. And then I thought, well, why not just start running in the shapes of letters? And then I can make a giant font out of something like this, and it will be mapped over, the entire city of Chicago. So not really like type, but definitely more like letters, with looking at an F in Lincoln Park, or a plus in Lakeview, or a 3 across the Gold Coast. I don't know. And, I've worked with, I think there's probably about 60 now. I've got the complete alphabet, so I'm starting to dig into some of the more interesting characters. It just gets harder and harder as you go. That's a 20-mile V. And I don't cheat either. So, so it's been really interesting and fun. And, on those mornings where you wake up and you're like, I don't want to get out of bed. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning. It's dark, and I just don't want to run. This, reminds me, I'm working on a project too. So it allows me to have two things at once, which I think is really great, to be able to link and connect your hobbies. Okay, so I'm about to make you sad for a moment, and then I promise I will end on something cute. So not so much about me, a little bit about me. So my wife really loves dogs, works with animals, and along maybe like 3 or 4 years ago now, we had been fostering puppies quite often. Maybe at this point, when we had gotten this litter, we might have been up to like 10 or 15. And we were fostering dogs pretty frequently, and we would foster them until they could find, their forever homes. And then they would leave us and go have a happy story and an ending. So this litter came in, and my wife used to be a graphic designer, but she sort of moved on from that and started doing this. And this litter came in, and we couldn't think of any good names, and we were sort of inspired by our designer friends at the moment. And we wanted to sort of figure out a way to get them excited as well. So this litter took on the names of different type designers and fonts. So this was Lucida. There was also Gaudi, Caslon, and Windsor. And these puppies were 6 weeks old, and we had them for about a week, and then I had to take off for a conference down in Florida. And I remember getting the call one night. I think I was at a restaurant, and my wife is crying, and the puppies, after a week, because they had been in a shelter, they had gotten sick. And usually when they get sick at such an early age, there's really nothing you can do. So Lucida was the first one to pass away. They had Parvo, and she was the first to go. And if you can imagine, one puppy sort of passing away in your arms, do it, 4 times. And that's kind of what she was going through. And for her, that was the first time that had happened to her, in her care. These puppies sort of, just dying in front of her, and she had to be there. And there's really nothing that they could do. The cost of medicine, if it was going to work, was extremely high. There was just really no options except to let this play out and comfort them on their way. So out of that, kind of became the catalyst for what she started to do, which was the Lucida Puppy Fund. And what that fund does, it's her nonprofit. It raises money for puppies that have medical needs. Puppies that need attention. It's very hard for shelters to sort of bear the burden of the debt that starts to come on when a puppy needs a lot of medicine and a lot of treatment early on. So, doing things like puppy showers and fundraisers, it sort of softens the blow a little bit for the shelters to hang on to these puppies long enough for people to adopt them. Anyway, a few of my favorites along the way. By far my favorites. They usually have names when we get them, but they don't keep their names. So this was Jack, but I gave him the name Creature as sort of, he looks like a creature. And that was his glamour shot day. I think he actually loved that. More Creature being Creature. As he got older, he got gnarlier and gnarlier. And in later days, he developed a snaggletooth. But he was my absolute favorite. He actually lives like 2 blocks away from us now, so we get to see him all the time. These were the Grendels. They all had the same name. They were just the Grendels. And then this little guy was Nook. Didn't have like a crazy story. It was just cute and took a really nice photo. So these were some really great ones too. Pigskin. He was really pink, so we just called him Pigskin. The Wiggler had a really great overbite and just wiggled his whole body when he got happy. Tadpole actually has an interesting story, and I think it's sort of a story that it kind of highlights how bad this can get. He was found in a trash can in an alley with rat bites all over him. I think he was like 4 or 5 weeks old, totally emaciated. They had to cut his throat and put in a feeding tube immediately. He was like hours away from death. But he's a Rhodesian Ridgeback, super big. He's like 120 pounds now. Done a great job. So this little guy is pretty special too. Actually, this is a female, but again, to try not to get too attached to them, I just call them all guys. This little guy came in as Bialy, but we lovingly call him the Turtle, or nowadays the Tortoise as he's gotten older. He was found again in an alley, had been stabbed in the neck. Left, and had lost the use of the back legs. So at the time, my wife was getting into working with animal massage therapy, so canine massage therapy, and sort of what you would do for humans, but for dogs. And wanted to really bring this dog in and adopt this dog so that she could try to work with him and help that therapy happen. Today, he is a ripped muscly, good-looking dog. He now can walk. Not perfectly, but he definitely has a lot of motion, gets up on his own, and it's great. We've actually co-adopted him with another family just so that he can see his therapy through. And it's kind of become the mascot for my wife's business that she started, and I designed the logo for, or Natural Pet. So she works with holistic things that she makes for skin issues and things for other dogs. So that's all I have. That's a little bit about me. Thanks, guys. Thank everybody.